You know Dasher and Dancer and Prancer and Vixen, Comet and Cupid and Donner and Blitzen. But do you recall the most inattentive reindeer of all? You know, as I was putting together the script for this video, it occurred to me that I left basic training and I headed for tech school. I mean, basic at the time was 6 weeks long, so I think I left either it was yesterday or today. Today's the 17th, yesterday was the 16th of December. It was 33 years ago to the day that I left basic and went to tech school. And it was, again, oddly enough, a path that my father took. He went to basic training in Lackland and he went to tech school at Shepherd and for crew chief. But it was an interesting time for me to go in the Air Force because when I arrived at the base, we actually got to find out that we were all able to go home for Christmas after our 6 weeks of basic training. So they put me in a class for a couple of days for crew chief, and then they sent me off to home for Christmas. This is the shirt for my BTS. You know, what's interesting about this PT shirt is that when you look at the logo, you'll notice that the aircraft listed in the logo were the Delta, that is the triangular shape, used today in the Space Force logo. And although that looks like a watchtower, that actually looks much more like a Tesla tower than it is a flight tower. But I'm just pointing these things out today at how odd they were that they were in the symbology of the Air Force in 1988. So going home was a bit disruptive because my mom and dad, and I knew this, were going to plan to move to Sturgeon Bay, Wisconsin. But there was a finality of walking into the old house in Plainfield and seeing it empty, including my bedroom. And so I spent New Year's Eve with my girlfriend and her family, and I remember one of her family asking when I go back to school. And I remember saying, I think I said Tuesday, right, which would have been, or Wednesday, I think I said the 3rd. And I was correct, except that was the day that we were going to go back into class. And so on that day, instead, I showed up at the airport. I walked up to the gate, handed the attendant my ticket. They handed me a new ticket back. I hadn't traveled much, so this all seemed normal to me. But when I got down to when I got down to Wichita Falls Airport, it turned out that there were no buses and nobody else was there. And I suddenly realized that I had messed up and I was back on the wrong day. So I got a ride. I hitched a ride from a young lady and her boyfriend who was was at the base working. And when I got back to the dorm, I did the most practical thing I could think of. I walked in and I confessed I got my days mixed up, which, you know, that never makes them happy. But if there were ever a job of mine in the Air Force, as I've said, it was to frustrate every level of my visit. And this had to have been a big frustration. I know it was because when I went back to school, they couldn't put me in the same class. I'd missed a day of class. And you didn't make up these things. So they had to put me in another class on that same day that I'd missed, and that took 3 or 4 additional days. So these are the guys that I actually graduated with in my tech school class. I had some friends back at the dorm as well. One of my friends, his nickname was Mouse, and over the event, Mouse nicknamed me AWOL. It was great fun. It's great fun. Other than that, tech school didn't have a whole lot to offer other than I think I got my off-duty rights suspended until I was there 5 weeks. I think I could get out off base after maybe 2 or 3. But around the 4th week, I decided that I'd had enough. And I also realized that nobody was really taking names and checking any lists in or out the gate of who came and went. And so with a week left of my suspension from going off base, I went off base and met my friends over at the mall. You know, it's funny because I remember walking into the mall, and as you walk in, on the left-hand side, there was a there was a record store. And I remember walking in there, and I bought 2 tapes. I bought the Imagine soundtrack to the movie, and I bought a tape on meditation. And so if you're wondering when the first time was that I started to meditate, it was when I got that tape. And that tape was pretty cool. I'm going to call it authentic. I lost it a couple years ago in a move. I don't know what happened to it. But, you know, tech school was really just about getting your feet under you and making some friends. And I made some great friends there. And in particular, I want to thank Mouse, and I want to thank my friend Airman Lane for teaching us all a Louisiana way of being. Fuck it. I appreciate your time this week, and I'll have a special episode for next week, which is Christmas. Isn't it funny how these timings all work out? Peace.